In this episode of Contracting Conversations, how can a software company protect its proprietary data while a government agency gets the rights it needs for national security? And where can you turn for instruction and expert guidance on navigating this emerging and highly specialized field of contracts? Find out when we sit down to pick the brain of Vicki Allums, one of DAU's own leading experts on intellectual property. I'm Scott Williams, along with my co-host Jim Valley, coming to you straight from our booth at the NEXUS 24 conference in Jacksonville, Florida. Hey, we're here at Jacksonville, Florida at the NCMA NEXUS event. It is co-hosted by DAU. And speaking of DAU, we had the pleasure to have with us Vicki Allums, who's a professor at DAU. And Vicki, tell us a little bit about yourself and in your presentation.
Absolutely. As you said, I'm Vicki Allums. I'm the Learning Director for Intellectual Property at DAU. I've been at DAU since 2019. This is a relatively new position. There was someone in the position that was there about a year, but this was before all of this sort of policy development really happened in this area. And my role at DAU is really oversight over the curriculum development in this very, very critical and extremely important area. My background is I'm an intellectual property lawyer. I have been for many years. I started my career as an international trade lawyer and then moved into intellectual property. I was one of the lawyers who was involved in the trade agreements that people talk about in this country. I traveled all over the world, both as a customs lawyer, but also as a lawyer for the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office and their international office. Really, really huge area, very critical area then, and then moved to National Public Radio. I was one of NPR's lawyers, did a lot of their trademark work, and also worked for the American Institute of Architects, which is a nonprofit association representing architects in the country. And my work at AIA, same thing, was intellectual property, so I have a pretty significant background in IP. Before I came to DAU, I was DISA's intellectual property lawyer, which was a fabulous place to work in terms of the portfolio and the issues and the mission that they dealt with. I also did information and cybersecurity, handle cybersecurity issues at DISA. So I've been around a while, have a pretty extensive background, and then came to DAU, where I'm thrilled to be a part of the team here, because intellectual property and data rights in terms of acquisition is such a critical issue. It's a huge issue, and how we approach it is a huge issue. And of course, Congress has been looking at what we do, because there's money involved, making sure that we have sufficient licensed data rights, as we call it, to be able to maintain, sustain, long-term sustainment of the technology. And I think it's a crucial issue now because of so much of the technology that we need is developed by the private sector. And so, of course, the private sector has their interest in their intellectual property. We have to meet mission needs, national security for our country. But sort of those two tensions in terms of respecting the contractor's intellectual property, but also getting the rights that we need, getting it at a fair and reasonable price for the taxpayer, and also making sure that we're keeping up in terms of evolving technologies that are out there. And so I think that's a broad overview of some of the tensions. And a program within the Department of Defense was set up called it's the OSD IP Cadre, which is a team of folks, multifunctional team of folks, lawyers, program managers, folks with a logistician background, who set the policy on this. There are cadre offices that were set up with the services, both Army, Air Force, and the Navy, all have IP cadre offices, and we collaborate with the OSD IP cadre office, and that's part of a new instruction that was issued in 2019, DODI 501044, which says DAU must collaborate with the OSD IP cadre in reviewing and developing curricula in this highly complex area. And so they're our partners in this. We also work with the other cadres for the services, as well as the DoD component agencies. And since I've been with DAU, we've done a number of things. We created a strategic plan back in 2020, so it's 2021 to 2026 is our strategic plan. And what we did was we really looked at what do we have at DAU in terms of IP curriculum? What do we need to have to meet our customers' needs? And also the other thing is, what's evolving? What are the evolving technologies that we need to be concerned about? AI certainly is one of those in terms of AI, intellectual property, and contracting issues. And so we created a community of practice as part of our strategic plan. We have numerous items, I think over 80 items on that strategic plan. Some of them are curriculum development, some of them are collaborating with industry, collaborating and engaging other organizations. We are grateful to be here. We thank Michelle Courier for inviting us to participate in this particular forum because it really aligns very well with our ability and our goal, I think is a better way to put it, to do outreach with other organizations on this very critical topic. But in terms of our strategic plan, some of the highlights of things that we've done over the last really 3 to 4 years is our community of practice, which we've talked about. There was some issues in terms of our technical transition to the new platform that we're on. But if you go on DAU's website, you can find it. There's a wealth of information there. We also are updating our online suite of modules. There are 7 modules that are really the foundation of intellectual property and data rights. We hope to deploy those. Our goal is to deploy those this summer, and it's a scenario-based approach in terms of how you teach this, multifunctional team approach. And one of the things we're really focusing on is teaching the acquisition workforce to develop an intellectual property strategy. What does that require us to do? Think about what our requirements are, what our needs are, what we need to do upfront early before we even go out with an RFI or really start the acquisition process. But as a multifunctional team with the contracting lawyer, the IP lawyer, the program manager, contracting officer, the logistician, if we need a software a subject matter expert, the budget and finance person, everybody needs to be at the table to really think about what is it that we need, what do we need to do with it in the short term, what do we need to do with this technology in the long term, do we need to give it to one of our NATO allies, what do we need to do with this, and once we figure out sort of what our requirements are, really put together sort of a strategy of what kind of rights do we need. So if you need long-term sustainment, and you need it in that technical data, okay, what does that mean for the rights that you need? And if it's proprietary technology, what rights is the vendor or contractor willing to give us, because that's their asset for their company. So how do we negotiate that? And we're moving towards specially negotiated licenses. We've done a video around that, but all of these really complex topics. And one of the things we've done really is we know folks have a small amount of time that they can sit for training because they're doing, their job every day. And so we have really focused, I think, over the last 2 to 3 years on providing sort of on-demand videos. Topical, short, foundational, gets really to the point in terms of here are the issues that you need to spot. And then if you need to go further, you can either find an IP lawyer with your organization or a contracting lawyer with your organization or another expert to help you delve deeper into a specific acquisition. But here are the basics. And so we've created about 10, 12 videos. We have 6 more on various topics, especially negotiated licenses, software acquisitions, open source software. We're working on 6 now that will be deployed later this year. One dealing with AI and contracting, another dealing with intellectual property in the supply chain, vendor product support, vendor lock, all of these really critical topics that you'll have a 10 to 15 minute video. We just released 2 videos in January. One is on SBIR data rights, very important topic. The other one is on negotiation. Because if you're going to do especially negotiated license, you need to know how to negotiate, right? How do you do that? So those 2 videos came out this summer. You can find them on our website. We have a media page with all of these videos on it, and we have more that are coming out. We have a basic video that one of my colleagues created, which is a 10-minute primer on intellectual property and data rights. We're creating additional tools. How do you do a CEDRA? What does that mean? So we have tools on our website that we've created over the last 3 years, really dealing with these very specific topics. Then the other thing I think that we do is mission assistance, which is very significant for us. So if you're about to do an acquisition and you really need guidance on, well, how do I approach this? what will the intellectual property issues be? What do I need to be concerned about? My colleagues, our team will come in and work with you on that. We have an IP strategy workshop. They will work with you directly, specifically on a particular acquisition, walking you through what you need to do in terms of developing an intellectual property strategy. So we have a lot of things that we have put in place and that we're continuing to put in place, working really with our partners, the OSD IP Cadre Office, also the Cadre Offices for the Services, and DoD components. One of the things we've done is we have an annual meeting every year with the OSD IP Cadre, all the Cadre leads, and all of the services, DoD component agencies, contacts. So we've created this list of experts that we have, folks that we can go to. We're working on that, actually, finalizing it. We also have a list of IP Cadre leads, because one of the questions that we get from the workforce is, I don't know who to go to. You know, my organization, in terms of my program, who advises us? We may not have an IP lawyer. Who do we go to really flesh out these issues? And so we're hoping to fill that gap by creating these contact lists, and the IP Cadre list. We want to put that on our website. We're working with them to get permission to do that, so that there is a contact person that folks can go to. And they may not be the person that's going to work with them directly, but they can certainly advise them on who they need to go to talk to. So we have a lot of things that we have done that we're currently doing. One of the things we plan to focus on in the future, which is also part of our strategic plan, is really to be more scenario based, because people say, you know, I learned this by doing it.
Learning that sticks with you.
That's exactly right. It's learning that sticks with you, exactly. And so that's our goal, is to really do a lot of our training, our deployment of our online suite is scenario based, but that's the focus that we'd like to really move toward in the future. Also working with our industry partners, because industry has said to us, well, we really don't know what your requirements are, and you know, sometimes they're ambiguous and you don't communicate with us, and this is our company's IP, and if we just knew what you needed, maybe we could both sit at the table. Now that doesn't take away the fact that they're running a business and we have, you know, our mission needs that we have, which is a significant mission need, national security, you know, protection of our country. But if we could just sit down, is what they say, and you tell us what is it that you need, maybe we can be part of the discussion and working out some solutions, you know, that really benefits both parties. And so what we'd like to do is, and we've started some of this, collaborating with industry on the creation of IP data rights training. And we have one course where I do it with a foundational discussion where there's somebody from one of the vendor organizations who's sitting at the table, big contractor, sitting at the table with me. And you know, it works very well because he's able to say, as I'm talking, saying this is our approach in the government, and here's why. And then he comes back and says, okay, well, that approach raises these particular issues for us as a contractor. And so we have sort of a discussion in a meeting of the minds. We'd like to do a lot more of that. One of the other things we'd like to do is, and we had it on our website before we moved over to the new platform, is getting case studies. You know, in the field, what did you do with this particular acquisition? What were some of the issues? What are the lessons learned? And then how can we take that and fold that into our training? Now, the issue we have there is some people say, well, I don't really want to talk about this because, you know, this didn't go so well. Well, that's okay if it didn't go so well.
You can learn a lot from things that don't go so well.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, they don't want, they're embarrassed.
Exactly.
Yes.
We say, don't be, we'll change the name.
It's easy said and done there.
Exactly. We'll change the names of the organization, the acquisition, all of that. But that's another thing we want to work toward, is really getting people to give us those case studies so that we can build upon that. You know, the other thing people have asked us for is sort of best practice kind of I hate to say templates, because for some folks that's not a good word, because, you know, every situation is different, it's nuanced. So you can't really take a template that is maybe for one particular acquisition and use it, you know, without amending it or thinking about doing the kind of analysis that you need to do, why you need to amend it, why you need to make changes. So that's something that is an item or issue that's on our radar screen in terms of looking at how we can help the workforce, because they've said, well, we need this. You know, IP and data rights is complicated, especially if you doing acquisitions that are non-FAR based. For example, OTAs. So we've done a webinar on OTAs. You can go on our website and you'll find this. You know, it's not part of it's not a FAR-based acquisition. So people say, well, how do I start? And so providing sort of guidance on how you do that. We've also done a webinar series and worked with the logistics team on additive manufacturing and IP. You know, what are the issues that are there and what do we need to be concerned about? And they put out a course back maybe 2 or 3 years ago, and there's an IP segment. And what we did was we worked with IP lawyers across the entire department, especially from the services, to provide us sort of what are the issues that you advise your clients on. And we folded that really into that module. So we have a lot of that that we'd like to do. We've been very busy. We will be very busy because this is an important area, but we think collaboration is really the key, working multidisciplinary as a team. We, in the IP strategy workshop, which is going to be a foundation of one of our courses when our modules come out this summer, we teach that from a team approach. Who needs to be a member of the team? And what we're doing is, it's a culture change in terms of how we approach intellectual property and data rights, I think, within the department. It's a cultural change, but we think if we start these steps, and we've done a lot of this work working with our partners across the department, that we can get there in terms of having people think initially, when you think about an acquisition, well, who needs to be at this table? And then sit down and really sort of figure out what are the needs, what they need to do with this technology in the short and the long term, and where they need to go to really build in the kinds of data rights that they're going to need, and then be able to negotiate that with the industry partner. And so it's a different approach in terms of working together as a team, but it's something that we think is definitely needed. In my presentation on yesterday, I talked a lot about how you go about doing this, sort of, you know, in the weeds a little bit, but also at the 100,000 foot level as a broad overview. And I think one of the other things is Congress is expecting us, you know, to do a lot of this and to really work with our industry partners to get at sort of what the issues are, and because it's costly.
I feel like I'm a novice now. I mean, I thought I kind of understood intellectual property, but obviously people don't know what they don't know.
Exactly.
And I've always, you know, people say, why should I take an accounting class?
Right.
Well, I know it's a basic accounting class,
That's
but
right.
it allows you to communicate with your accountant better.
Right.
Well, guess what? Maybe I need to do this simulation as a team, because
Exactly.
it helps you develop.
That's exactly
You need
right.
to work with the IP lawyer and not just kind of throw your hands up.
Exactly.
But I do want to. We do need other podcasts. Because there's other things I want to talk to you about, like, you know, what happens when you're working with commercial who don't want to give up their IP rights.
Sure.
Or other.
Well, one of the other things too is I'm glad you said that, because podcast is on. I'm doing more podcasts is actually on our strategic plan, and we have a wealth of experts that we can pull from across the department. So if we can partner with you to do more podcasts on some of these topics, that would be fabulous.
We would be happy to do that.
Great.
Or even help you create your own podcast.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah.
Okay.
Very impressed with the work you've done.
Thank you.
At DAU.
But it's part of a team, though. This is an entire team that's behind my colleagues. They're IP professors at DAU. I give them credit. They've worked extremely hard. This is really a team effort. Also, our partners in the OSD IP cadre office and across the entire department. This is really a huge team effort. I'm just sitting here with you guys now, but there are a lot of folks behind me.
Well, we appreciate you coming by and talking with us. And like I said, a lot of the things that you were talking about really resonate with the theme of the conference, bringing in acquisition team members together. And IP is an area, I tell you, a lot of people think they know it, but there's a lot they might not know. Like Jim said, you don't even know what you don't know, and it's a complicated area. So thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate it.
All right, so the viewers out there, thank you for being with us today. Please smash that like button, subscribe, whether it's on DAU Media, YouTube, or Apple Podcasts, and we'll see you next time.